Well, you're watching NC Continental Prime, and earlier on we told you about the controversy that has blighted the 1,411 Nigerian delegates that were on the entourage of President Bola Tinubu to the COP28 summit. And at this point, I have Achike Chude, who is a public affairs analyst, to discuss this further with me on the news. Achike, it's nice to have you talk to us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So permit me to be a little bit cheeky. Nigeria has the highest population in Africa. It is tagged to be an African giant. When you look at the economy, it is the largest in Africa. So why wouldn't we have a president with 1,400 plus delegates accompany him to the COP28 climate summit, knowing fully well that this particular summit is topical and is very, very important for issues relating to climate as it affects Africa and economy?
Well, simply because Nigeria is a very poor country. Nigeria can have the largest economy in Africa, but Nigeria is a very poor country. It's as simple as that. And Nigeria is a heavily indebted country. Nigeria has been borrowing money from the international community to be able to pay salaries and carry out a few capital projects. So Nigeria can ill afford this kind of a jamboree. It is a jamboree because if we understand what the whole climate situation is all about, this is something that is technical, that is that should comprise, if you talk about the president's delegation, apart from the political leadership, which is headed by the president, and perhaps a few other people in government, maybe one or two ministers, all you should have should be experts in various areas of climate change. And that's not what you have. So you have all manners of people who have absolutely nothing to do with climate change, making the delegation, costing taxpayers so much money. And let me just say this. If the president tells us and this government tells us that they are interested in the development of this country and that they are churning out all manners of economic policies to turn this country around, this action itself is clearly an indication that the government will go nowhere in its effort to turn Nigeria around, because it shows an absolute disconnection from reality. It shows that the political leadership of this country still do not understand what we're talking about. They tell Nigerians to make sacrifices and they're not willing to lift a finger to make one single sacrifice.
But Achike,
this is not the first time.
Yeah, but Achike, yes, according to reports, it's just about 589 of those 589 were those who actually accompanied the president officially to the COP summit out of 1,411. That's not even up to half.
Can you tell me? Good. So what would 589, even if it is not 1,000, which is still disputable, because people are still saying that it is 1,401 persons that accompany the president. Even if it is 589, that is more than a plane load of people. I mean, depending on the capacity of the plane, more than maybe almost 2 plane loads of people who accompany the president to go and do what? Who were the people? How many ministers? What were the ministers doing? Is every ministry in the country right now about climate change? They should have, the major people who are in the forefront of the climate change. And then they are the ones that should be able to draft policies that would embrace every aspect of governance in this country.
But of course, sorry to just cut in, yes, because I want us to be as objective as possible here. Now, looking at the caliber of people that went with the president to this particular summit, we had business leaders, environmentalists, climate activists, and journalists, aside civil servants and ministers. So does that, in a way, justify that these people who went with the president to the summit are actually policy makers and will be able to drive policies that can help Nigeria in terms of its economy and climate-related issues, not only for Nigeria, but then for Africa?
Did they all go there at government expense? And the issue
some of them were. Some went on.
Good. The issue is this: can the government? I mean, if some went on their own, then you cannot include them in the government delegation. It's as simple as that. They went on their own. Different organizations sponsored them, so they cannot be part of the 581 people that follow the president, because that would be false reporting if that is the case. We're talking about the people who went with the president on the mandate, on the expenses of the Nigerian state. This is what we're talking about. And I'm saying that 581 people, if that is the case, is too much, way too much. The government does not need all of these people. How many climate activists? How many civil society activists? Most of the civil society activists, I can tell you that when there are people who are being funded by international funding partners, most of them that will go there. So unless they are, civil society activists that were set up by the government, so these are, governmental organizations. So that would become a completely different thing. But I'm saying, and look, it is time for us to be realistic about what we are facing in this country. As much as you want to play the devils or want to play the devil's advocate, there are certain truths that must be told. That this government has become too profligate, and they don't seem to understand that the situation on ground calls for very sober reflection and calls for, prudence with the way public resources are being managed. We have seen that. We have seen, how public money was expended on cars, on jeeps for lawmakers. We have seen how much was expended, for the office of the First Lady, and so many other things that we're seeing in the country. So this is not right. There's no basis why the government, we have to reflect the reality of the ground, and that reality, India is a rich country, fairly rich country. China is a fairly rich country. So when those people are spending so much in terms of the number of people that accompany them for such summits, then we could understand. Look at a country like England or United Kingdom. It's far, far richer than Nigeria. How many delegates did they send? It's not about the population of this country, but it's about the people that can contribute meaningfully to the whole dialogue that is going on. And like I said, it's not everybody, because this is a very specialized event that needs the input of experts and people who are involved in climate, in the climate struggle over time. Most of the people that are on this delegation know next to nothing about climate. That's why I describe it as a jamboree. And that's what I think it is.
Achike, Chude, thank you so much for talking to us on the news.
Thank you.